An Afghan marital law will now be reviewed by Afghanistan's Justice Ministry after its passage sparked international outcry. Critics say the controversial legislation violates women's rights by legalizing marital rape. The law reportedly states that a wife is obligated to fulfill her husband's sexual desires unless she is ill. Barring a medical emergency, women would be required to ask for their husband's permission to leave their home, look for work or get an education. Also under this legislation, women would not inherit any of their husband's wealth or have custody of their children. It applies to Afghanistan's Shia minority. They make up 10 to 20% of the country's population. Earlier, I spoke with Mariam Nawabi from Karama, the Muslim Women Lawyers for Human Rights Association. I asked her what she made of the argument put forward by some Karzai supporters that he was simply encouraging communal reconciliation by integrating Shia and Sunni laws. How do you mention it?
I don't think so. I think the timing of it being right, during an election kind of process, it looks to me as if it's being done to appease a certain segment of the population. But Afghan law recognizes that different sects under Islamic law can have their own personal code. So that is there. But exercising that at this time seems like a quid pro quo to me.
So what do you think? This 2 to 3 month review, some are saying, well, this might be a sop for the West to say that it's being dealt with. It might also be a sop to fundamentalist Shias to say, look, we'll let this blow over and then we'll integrate it anyway.
Yeah, it could be that there's going to be a stop and they're going to say they're reviewing it, and then if Karzai wins, maybe it'll be implemented after that election. But the important thing is that in the Afghan constitution, there's equal rights granted for Afghan men and women before the law. But there's a provision that says, well, it can't contravene Sharia. So it's the interpretation of what Sharia means that ends up affecting people's lives on a daily basis. And what we're seeing is a very conservative interpretation that not maybe the majority of Afghan people believe in, but somehow this group politically has been able to push forward a law that they believe.
And are they getting more and more powerful? I mean, are things getting more and more conservative?
It's a conservative society, and with warfare, you end up having people who cling to values, which is necessary. But yes, we do see in the Afghan parliament, people who would like to see more conservative laws, and some would say it would be very close to what the Taliban were actually doing. And so there's a balance that has to be struck, and that's for the Afghan people, of course, to decide. But in a country where the women are largely uneducated, then they don't know their rights, then it's very difficult because they can end up actually agreeing. There were some women's groups saying that we didn't have an issue with the law, and I don't know if they really know their full rights even under Islamic law or the Constitution.
If this law does eventually get into the Gazette, it's actually put into place, should there be an argument about whether NATO and the US and other countries should be supplying troops to support such a constitution or a government which has such laws?
Already some of the leaders of the European countries have brought up this point that if these kind of laws are put into place, that they will take a very hard look at what support they're giving Afghanistan. And it's difficult. There's a balance between assisting a country and imposing our values on it, but at the same time, if we're really trying to help the people and half the population is being discriminated against, are we really putting our support in the right place? So we have to give women the tools they need to really understand their rights under Islamic law, and also for the general population to be educated more about Islam, because it's being used and misused as a tool to oppress when it should be a means of worship and to learn more, and that's not happening, unfortunately. And it'll take time to get there, but I think that we will see setbacks from countries if such a law were implemented.
But can you trust Hamid Karzai now, after all of this?
The Afghan people, they'll be voting for who they think their next leader should be, and they should assess a candidate based on what they feel, what decisions that they are making for the good of the people. I think Afghan women should question whether they would want to support a leader who would, without much consultation, take away so much of their rights that they had fought so hard for, and some of the gains that Afghan women had made, because there have been advances in women's participation in the political, economic, and civil society. So I think that it may be showing sometimes some of the weaknesses of President Karzai's campaign, where he's having to go to these other groups to try to appease them by giving them something that they may want, rather than looking at what's in the best interest of the country.
Mariam Nawabi speaking to me earlier. Israeli police have shot dead a Palestinian driver in East Jerusalem.